The autistic traveler is leaving.
Bye! Come with me as I travel from Toronto, Canada to Bruges, Belgium. I planned this trip months in advance. The plan was to fly from Toronto to Paris on Air France and then get the Eurostar train from Paris to Brussels. From Brussels, I would get a regional train to Bruges. The journey hit its first snag before I'd even left. 2 days prior to departure, I got an email from Air France saying that I had been bumped from the flight. What? They booked me on an Air Canada flight leaving a couple of hours later. The Air France flight did happen, I just wasn't on it. I can only assume that this was an overbooking issue. Given my penchant for planning travel to the last second, this change in plans created a lot of anxiety. But the Air Canada people took amazing care of me. They escorted me through security and then I got a ride on one of those golf cart things all the way to my gate. The flight was delayed by about an hour, but when it was finally time to board, I was called by name for pre-boarding. I cannot emphasize enough what a difference this makes. Boarding is one of the trickiest parts of travel for me, so being able to board ahead of the crowd and take a bit of extra time to get settled makes all the difference. The flight was super comfortable. The seat beside me was empty, which was a rare treat, and the flight attendants were wonderful. My arrival in Paris went smoothly. I have not been a fan of Charles de Gaulle Airport in the past, but they do seem to be making genuine efforts to improve processes for Sunflower lanyard users, so all credit to them. I took a train from CDG Airport to Gare du Nord where I was due to board the Eurostar, and this is where I hit my second snag. The combination of being bumped from Air France to Air Canada and the Air Canada flight being delayed resulted in me not making it to my Eurostar train on time. The train left about 10 minutes before I got to Gare du Nord. The good news is that these trains run fairly frequently. I had to wait a couple of hours in a very busy train station where the people are less than helpful, and that was fraught. But at least I knew another train was coming. I figured that since I had already paid for a ticket, if the train wasn't full, I'd be able to get on with no problem. That's where the bad news comes in. When the train arrived, I went and spoke to the train manager as I'd been advised to do. I explained the whole ordeal of flight changes and delays, and the train manager said that due to various factors, I would only be able to take the journey if I paid €109. When I say I was devastated, I am not kidding. I was fresh off a long-haul flight and I was exhausted, and I was in this unfamiliar, crowded, noisy, hostile environment, and now I was being told that I would have to fork over €109 for a ticket that I had already paid for and that I'd only spent about €30 on to begin with. The only thing that saved me from completely melting down was how absolutely kind the train manager was. I could tell that he did not want to be giving me this news. He was apologizing profusely. I felt bad for him because he felt so bad for me. I was visibly upset and it definitely affected him. He suggested that I get on the train and pay the €109. He said that he would give me a receipt and whatever documentation I would need to claim the money back from Air France, who had resulted in this whole mess. Well, I needed to get to Belgium, so I couldn't see that I had much of a choice. The train manager filled out a form and handed it to me. He told me which specific seat to sit in, and he said that someone would come by during the journey to take payment. As the train rolled out of the station, I was at a really low ebb, literally fighting back tears. I was not coping very well with all of this. But as I looked out of the window, I thought, I'm in a train traveling through the north of France on my way to a country I've never been to. I figured that I had a choice. I could wallow in the negativity of what had just happened, or I could appreciate where I was and what I was doing. And so I started to focus on the scenery I was traveling through. I wasn't able to completely shake the bad feelings, but I did at least enjoy the train ride. The train manager I had spoken to walked through the carriage I was in a couple of times throughout the journey. On one occasion, he stopped to ask if I was all right, but no one asked me for payment. We got to Brussels and I got off the train feeling this huge weight just roll off me. Did the train manager forget that I was supposed to pay, or did he intentionally overlook me? No matter which it was, I was so thankful about not being dinged with that extra cost. I'm not sure why, but I expected Brussels train station to be quiet, and it wasn't. It turns out that Brussels is a major hub, and why wouldn't it be? I struggled to figure out where I needed to go, and eventually I found my way to a ticket office where I could ask for help. I was worried about whether my regional ticket to Bruges would still be good, and the man in the ticket office assured me that it was. The only problem? I had 90 seconds to get to the platform where the next train was leaving from. I flew out of the ticket office and sprinted in the direction I was shown. I somehow managed to levitate myself up the steps, and I made it onto the train in the nick of time. And for the first time during the ride from Brussels to Bruges, I found myself completely able to relax. What I could see of the Belgian countryside was limited because by now it was getting dark, and by this point I was exhausted in all kinds of ways. So I just sat back and allowed myself to unwind. Night had completely fallen by the time I made it to Bruges, and all I really wanted to do was find the bed and breakfast I'd booked, have something for dinner, and go to bed. There was a free shuttle that runs from Bruges train station and does a loop around the city, so I hopped onto that, and it dropped me off just steps away from my bed and breakfast. I checked in, made my way to my room, and literally collapsed on my bed with exhaustion. What a long, fraught journey this was, but I survived it. And when I finally got to explore Bruges, I absolutely loved every moment. But that's a story for the next video.